Oh, wait. What's the name of your...
Too late. Too late. It's time to say, hey, this is Sully, and you're watching the Break It Down show.
Hey, this is Sully from 21 Gun Podcast, and you're watching the Break It Down show.
Come on. Just like pros around here. Yeah, with some pro shit going on. Man, I love it. We were talking off mic, and I made you shut up because I want to talk about this live.
That happens.
But, we're just both dragging. And I've look, some of the stuff I've been doing is fun, but a lot of it's been business. And I've got so many things to write. And, when you don't have a staff to write something for you, you've got to write it yourself. You've got to be critical. All these things. And I've just got so much work, and I'm already so tired. Man, and then I said to you, like, I have a shitty boss.
Yeah, I was like, what do you mean? I'm my own boss, actually, for most of the time. Yeah. But when you have that boss, they don't just have you by email. They have you literally in your brain. It literally, as you're trying to relax. And that's the funny thing, too. And we say this in the veteran community. If you can lay down on a couch on a Saturday and do nothing for 3 hours, you're not really a veteran. Because I haven't been able to do that in, 20 years now.
Yeah. It's hard, guys that, we worked at different ends of things. I was a ground guy, you were an air guy, but either way, and you guys are only allowed to work, maybe people don't know this, but you're only allowed to work so much on an airplane because you've got to be actually awake when you do your job.
That's right.
And we can kind of operate on caffeine and nicotine and all the E's, taurine and everything, and go out and walk around all day. Either way, we're all exhausted all the time.
Oh yeah. That was one of the best training things. And I mean, in the flying community, you're right. You had, I guess, alert time. And then once that happened, your clock was going. And, but that was under the illusion that you were sleeping prior to that go time, but usually you were doing other stuff. And so there were days when you're at the end of an 18-hour, and I can't remember, it's just been so long. I don't remember how long our duty days were, but let's say it's 18 hours. You're really on like hour 28, and you're landing an airplane filled with 50 something dudes, a couple pallets, maybe a tank, who knows? And you're just like, muscle memory. Let's get this chunk of steel onto the runway and not kill anyone in the process.
I was on a C-17 flight one time, 100 plus souls, large vehicles, and several, and this is for the audience, several stacked flat pallets, I guess you would call them, of a lot of like large mortar shells. These are like 120 millimeter 155s, large, like there's hundreds of these things in this airplane. And you're hoping that the dudes or the folks flying it are well rested, and you're sitting still in this humming mother like womb for all these hours, at least down where we are, like you inevitably get sleepy.
Sure. Yeah, it's we call that the Gucci community, the T-tail community. They're the big fancy air conditioned. They even use, I believe the C-17s have a fighter plane yoke, like a stick. The C-130s, what we were flying were 1964, 1966 models, no air conditioning. We stayed low. Our envelope of operations was, I guess legally was at about 300 feet, but we would go lower than that. And it just beat the shit out of you. I mean, that aircraft, as good as it was, and how much punishment it could take, and how much punishment we could lay in on it. I mean, it was we air crew. We always get the what's up, fly boys, and then we would come off a mission and we're covered in oil. We have a bullet hole in the wing. We have it was like a real working man's airplane, almost like a fixed wing helicopter. That's why I like that plane so much.
Yeah, it definitely is. Well, first off, it's one of the oldest platforms we fly. I mean, it's not as old as the U-2 and everything, but it's really damn old because it's really good at what it does. And as you know, and I'm not telling you, it's on the audience, that platform can be anything we want it to be, from a super spy plane to a troop carrier.
Yep. All different designations, EC, HC. The AC, I actually had orders down to the Hurlburt field, or was it Eglin? I can't remember now, but to fly the ACs, which were the C-130s with a howitzer on the side. I believe 40 millimeter, maybe a 20 millimeter cannon. But it was one of those things. I was in Iraq and I got hurt, and I couldn't fly anymore after that. And so I was supposed to come home from that deployment and go down and train for those. And then I talked to someone at one of the veteran events that I work for, and he was like, "Oh man, my lungs are all scarred." I worked in AC-130s. The lead level in the air was super, super high, like ridiculous level. OSHA would never let that much lead in any other occupation. And he said, just take it as a mixed blessing. And I was like, yeah, I think about that all the time, because it's like, you know, you never know. And I guess I'm glad I had a brain injury. I'll take that, I guess, over lung cancer any day.
I mean, you got to pick something like this.
Yeah.
When my peers are talking about how like women can't be in combat because they get hurt more than like everybody gets hurt. You get hurt. You don't even know it for 20 years, maybe. You know, the folks that lived in Kandahar, it smelled like dung there. And I'm saying nice words. It smelled like human waste because there was a human waste pond inside the camp.
Yep.
And you breathe dust and whatever else is in that. We're burning trash. They're burning whatever I mean, you can have a desk job and have your physical health ruined.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And what's great about that is they're starting to focus on those things. My coffee company, 22 Sierra, we do. So when we sell bags, do I have one in front of me? No, I don't. We have a Burn Pits 360 bag. So these special bags, when we sell them, we donate $2 to that organization and then $1 to the Grunt Style Foundation. But yeah, Burn Pits 360, fantastic organization. And they've raised so much awareness that I didn't watch it, but I heard that Biden spoke about Burn Pits at his thing, whatever that speeches they do every year.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's in the, I don't know what you call that. It's in the conversation now, and people are paying attention to it, and they should, because I mean, you think just because you didn't have a bullet ripped through you, you're going to make it out unscathed, and unless you sat in a finance office at Pope Air Force Base for 6 years and did nothing else, even then, who knows what you're drinking in the water next to Bragg?
Well, you know, honestly, I mean, if you go to Fort Rucker, it's an instant disability rating, because they can't account for all the chemical weapons they've lost over the year. There's full chemical ranges that they don't know where they are specifically, because time has gone, things have grown. And so when you go there, it's already in the table. It's in the water table of the town. Sure. It's just there. They're not going anywhere.
Look at Camp Lejeune. They had, I don't remember how long ago it was, but, and I don't remember the number, we'll say hundreds of Marines, male Marines, that turned out to have breast cancer, and people that lived on the base. And it's like, it for a man to get breast cancer is like 1 in a million, and this was like hundreds out of thousands. Like it was ridiculous. And yeah, it's coming through, it's leaching through the waters, it's leaching through all that, and people don't take account of that, but it happens.
Yeah. And so when you think about thank you for your service, you think about those aspects, you know, the things. And then also like the significant others, the kids that sacrifice as well and either lose their parent, or the significant other is sacrificing their career to care for somebody, or whatever it is. You know, there's just a lot of
think about
cost.
It's interesting I say that. Think about like several years ago, I met a guy that had an arm deformity, and he was about my age, and I asked what was, because we were at a disabled veteran thing, and I asked if he was a disabled veteran. He said, no, my dad was Agent Orange. And this is the result of his Agent Orange. So you're talking about children, who never even went to Vietnam, that are now walking around, young folks. I'll call myself young, that are suffering the ill effects of combat, basically. And it's war's a terrible thing.
To the government's credit, they recognize that this is happening more and more. And I'm not absolving them of their past misdeeds, but there are people there that are desperate to get this right, and slowly we inch forward, and sometimes we regress, but we're going in the right direction overall. My buddy Mikey B, by the way, speaking of Agent Orange, he's a SF guy, right? He attributes his cancer to his time in Southwest Asia, you know, and all of the deforestation that we had done, because that stuff doesn't just leave. And that means if it's in us, people who never served in the Vietnam conflict but go and they teach and train and they get it, then it's got to be in the Vietnamese and Cambodian populations.
Sure. And those guys are coming back from deployments. I had a guy on my show, Mark Garrison, real character of a guy. He wrote a book called Guts and Gunships, and he was talking about how they would fly basically into clouds of this stuff, and their uniforms would just be soaked with Agent Orange. And I think he said everyone in his squadron that flew came back with diabetes. Just killed their pancreas. Crazy stuff.
Yeah. You can no longer be in the military when you have diabetes. Like career defining, and however old
Absolutely.
you are. My brother, when he broke just the tiniest piece of his ankle bone off, but it was in the critical pivot point,
Mhm.
and he was like 22 or something. And then the response was, "Why don't we fuse your ankle?" And he's like, "Well, I'm 22,
Yeah.
and he passed away last October, but part of his demise was that injury. That one little injury just caused him pain, and it
Sure.
was
Yeah.
it was a heavy rock in his rucksack. It wasn't the thing that got him, but you can draw a straight line right back to that injury, and it contributed to his early demise for sure.
Sure. We're starting to see too, like TBI is the big one because again, it was, oh, were you blown up? No, then you don't have a TBI. And it's like, no, but I manned a 50 cal for 200,000 rounds. Yeah, that can do it. Jumping out of airplanes can do it. Hard landings, whatever it is, whatever it could be. We call it repetitive concussion syndrome. But what the military was doing, this is kind of where I found myself, was, so I don't really know what happened to me on the airplane. We were flying in Baghdad or outside of Baghdad, and that's all I remember. I woke up in the hospital, just kind of being shaken awake by someone, I think a squadron mate, and I had no idea what happened. So we just assumed that either I wasn't strapped in and we hit turbulence, or the plane did a maneuver, whatever. So I go through the medical process, right, at Womack. Great. I went through the Army process, which was really fun. And they said, oh, you have memory loss. And since that incident, I was having anxiety issues. I was having rage issues. I mean, just all sorts of issues. Yeah. Oh, it's PTSD. And I'm like, I'm not medicine, but I don't think that's what it is. That's what it is. Here's your pills. Take SSRIs, SNRIs, hypnotics, anti-anxiety, like the list was a mile long, pain medicines, gabapentin, like just horrible stuff. And by the way, when you take these, you can't fly anymore. You're done. So have fun in the civilian world. Right. And without having anyone to advocate for me, or really at the time know what any of this meant, I just said, okay. And I took it. And then I go to the VA, and the VA says, yeah, keep taking this. I gotta look. I was probably early 30s. I had no libido. I was sleeping all day long. I had memory loss. I was like a 95-year-old man. Yeah. And I ran into these guys called the Warrior Angels Foundation, head up by a real good friend of mine named Andrew Marr and his brother Adam Marr. Andrew was an SF guy. Adam was a TAC helicopter. Army is what? They're the Cobras? No, they're the Apaches. So they're Apache guys. And they team me up with this doctor, Dr. Mark Gordon, who it rang a bell. He was on Joe Rogan a bunch of times. So I watch all his episodes, and the guy gets me off all my medicines. And all he did was replenish hormones that my body was missing due to the medical regimen that I was on. Sure. And I went from functioning, like I said, like 10% to getting my master's degree in medical science to, having a family, podcast, all this stuff, which I wouldn't have done. And then, like I said, all it takes is advocating for yourself, listening to other people. And I think slowly the VA and these government organizations, they're picking up on this. Yeah. I hope that there's not something nefarious where they want us to be zombies and want us to be non-productive. We could go down that path if you want. But
they're a slow-moving organization. I mean, we'll just give them benefit of the doubt. They don't want us to be zombified, but they are desperate to help. And so, what do you hand someone pills? That's the answer that they're allowed to even give out. Right. The other thing is we call things certain things, and then other people call it something else, everything else, like PTSD. Well, it's PTS or post-traumatic growth. Man, I got a disorder. I have PTSD. I deal with it all the time. And if I don't maintain it, it gets bad for me, right? And so don't tell me it's post-traumatic growth. That's bullshit. I mean, for you, great. Not for me. Let me get my stuff. But I also can manage it for the most part without medicine, right?
Sure.
Which doesn't mean that I'm not looking for other means of lightening that load. But I don't want that gabapentin. I mean, I've got pain all the time. I don't like, because it's horrible, right? So I'm going to deal with the horrible that I have rather than, the other thing. The other thing is a TBI and just BI. Like, if you tell someone, well, it wasn't traumatic. It was just I bumped my head, and BIs are injury to your brain is an injury to your brain, and we've learned
trauma.
A lot about that.
Just visual trauma, sexual assault, all that can cause the same damage at the cellular level in the brain as, being tackled 100 times in football. Right. And it just takes opening your eyes to that. You had said something there. It made me think of something. I lost it, but it'll come back, I'm sure. Oh, the the different names for it, the PTS, PTSD, it's one of those things where, yeah, I don't know if it becomes almost like a political game or what that deal is. The issue is you're having issues. Label it what you want. If you don't find a fix for it, it's just going to continue to damage you, especially if your coping mechanism is in a dysfunctional way. So so never get hung up on that. The other thing veterans like to do, I've interviewed a ton of veterans in my career and talked to a lot of guys. They underplay their own experiences and their own symptoms because we don't want to seem like little bitches, right? We don't like when I was diagnosed with PTSD, I was like, why? Right? I flew airplanes. Well, did you get shot at? Sure, but I wasn't exposed to carnage or anything like that. We did some medical evacuation missions and stuff. And so I took that with me, like, I'm a little pussy. Like, why am I dealing with this shit when I know some Green Berets that aren't, well, they probably all are, but that I don't know are doing this stuff. And you can't do that. You have to say, as a human being, right? Say you're a motor pool guy. As a human being, is it normal for you to hear the alarm red go off at Balad Air Base 6 times a day and hear that, now, and people will say, oh yeah, all right, well, you weren't in combat. Yeah, no, that's not normal. And
that's not normal.
go to a random job, a librarian, and tell a librarian your story. They will look at you and go, you did what? So within the military community, we like to kind of stratify our own traumas, but don't belittle it. This stuff isn't normal to experience, and you're going to have effects from it. And if you ignore it, it's going to come and get you, whether it's for me, I ignored it, and I was driving into work one day and I was just paralyzed. I was absolutely paralyzed, and I didn't know what to do, and I didn't know who to call. And it'll happen. I guarantee you. If it's not now, it will eventually.
Let's put some context into what this looks like, because I was talking with a guy the other day on the show, on his show. I was actually on his show, and we were talking about Bosnia. And I would have to say, listen, it turns out we weren't in that much danger in Bosnia, but we didn't know that at the time. So I'm leaving the camp every day. I know that there's more mines than people can count. There are all kinds of unmarked areas. I'm not aware of what's marked and what's not marked. I don't know if someone's come in and put something after something's been marked. I don't know if the, this unit or that unit is going to show up today and try to attack us, and the war is going to start. We didn't know. So you're in an area that is dangerous. I got paid combat pay because I'm in this dangerous area full of conflict. It worked out that it wasn't that dangerous on a day-to-day basis, but that didn't mean that I didn't have to account for it and have not only a plan A and a B, but a C, D, E, F, and G.
And that can have effect, obviously, right?
When you finish up your lunch in Balad at the chow hall there, and then you hear that stupid on, like, right at noontime, like it always happens, incoming. Like, damn it, I was going to go get ice cream. And so now, and you're also thinking there could be mortars coming in through this chow hall tent, because next time it happens, it won't be the first time.
Sure.
And so you're just like, damn it, I've got to sit in this damn chow hall forever, waiting for someone to give an all clear for something I couldn't even hear. And thankfully nothing happened.
Yeah.
But you're dealing with that. You're still dealing with that threat of that incoming thing. And you're like you're on a large concrete pad, and there's nowhere for you to go. So you just sit in your chair and hope nothing comes through the roof.
Isn't that a good analogy for life, right? I mean, at some point it's going to get you. Who knows? I mean, could be today, may not be today, but
let me get my damn ice cream. Why do I got to sit down here? Why can't I get over and go in? We're going to stay in the tent, but
you always see in the movies the well-seasoned veteran who doesn't react to chaos, and that's actually one of the true things that happened. I remember being a young butter bar in Baghdad, and we were getting mortared, and I was freaked out. Right, they actually hit a FARP, forward air refueling point. It's like a giant picture of burrito the size of a bus. That's rubber and black, filled with jet fuel. Direct hit. Fireball, just like in the movies. And I was running around, like I said, like a chicken with its head cut off. Fast forward, 4 deployments later. And I'm taking a nap on the wing of the airplane because it's warm in wintertime. And you hear that and you're like, well, I mean, I guess if it hits me, I mean, what the odds of it hitting me here are the same as over there. So I'm just going to stay here and hope all works out well.
Yeah. And you learn the pattern. Like right behind my room was the bomb shelter. On the other side, about 100 yards away, were the helicopters. And so our area got mortared all the time, but it was a pattern. It was like 3 to 5 mortar drops, right?
Yeah.
And so like by the time we heard the first one, like there's no point in getting out of bed, because by the time I got my gear on and ran out and went over to the bomb shelter, it'd be over.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah, it doesn't take long for them to come down.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And all of those things become normal, or just like when all of the new people hit the ground, and some guys like, that's outgoing. And you're like,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah, exactly. You can start telling by the sound. It does, but you also have to look at, and I mean, I guess it's a sign of growth as you get older and stuff. You try to get the good out of it and all that stuff, because these memories are there, and you can't always file them away under that was a horrible experience area. What did you learn? And I know most veterans come out of situations like that, and we don't really get spun up over situations, right? You witness a traffic accident, you go, okay, what can I do to help, right? Or, oh, the TPS report wasn't in on time. Okay, fine, right? Everyone else is running around like chickens with their heads cut off, and you're like, we have a problem. Let's come up with a solution, and don't panic. Panic gets nothing. And I think that's just a valuable thing that veterans, police officers, firefighters, anyone that emergency room doctors, anywhere where you're put on the spot and you're told to act and respond in a certain way, it's great. It's good, I think.
I was and I still am a napper, and so even in combat, I would have to shut my brain down and my body down for a while. I mean, look, I worked at a high tempo. I worked for a long time, and then 36-hour days. Well, it's a 36-hour day, whatever,
Sure.
And civilians, they don't even get the math. I'm like, no, you don't understand. We got up, and that was a day. We still had the next day to do. It just started later than usual.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I would get to go, and you'd see like the less experienced guys or the fake hard asses go, half day. And I'm like, man, I promise there's going to be war when I get back. You guys are not going to win it while I'm gone.
Absolutely.
Take my nap. And then invariably when I took my nap, my brain would put pieces together of the puzzle that we were all trying to solve.
Sure.
But I needed that rest. And I knew it. As a pro, I knew like I need to go rest right now, because and this is an opportunity right now for me to rest. And who knows when the next thing is going to happen. So when you see that warm wing and you're like, I got 45 minutes, I need to get some sleep right now, because it might be 2 days before I get any real sleep again.
Yep. Well, that old saying, don't stand when you can sit, don't sit when you can lie down, and don't be awake when you can be sleeping.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
What do you do? This is a question I ask a lot of veterans, because the old school way of dealing with stress or memories or PTS, all that, was go to the I won't disparage any, we'll just say old school veteran organizations and drink and do whatever. Yeah. What do you do to improve your mental health or work on symptoms of PTSD?
So I have suicidal ideation every day, right? And that's just one of the byproducts of my PTSD and everything else. And that's fine. I deal with it. It's manageable for me. It's not enjoyable, but I deal with it, right? And so what I don't do is I don't go out and get hammered all the time. I don't put myself in situations where I exacerbate my problems, And it's not that I live a very fun and exciting, enjoyable life. There's just certain things where I'm like, no, thanks. I'm good with that. And I listen, I drink, but I might have 5 beers over the course of an evening instead of 25 beers, Right. And I have different speeds now that I operate at. Plus I'm just older and I don't need to run around like a wild man. I mean, I was crazy for a long time, no doubt.
Right.
And I had very little regard for my own or your safety, so I was glad to look, PTSD list, risk-seeking behavior and all these other things.
Well, one of the big things too is self-medication, and whatever that may be, drugs, alcohol, sex, riding a motorcycle super fast, whatever
that
gets
was
you.
Me right there. Yeah. sex and motorcycles. I would take my feet. When I got home, and I lived in Vegas, so I get on my CBR, went 1100, and take off down the road, and I would put my feet down at about 130 miles an hour just to know that I was home. And I was just hovering them on the concrete or the asphalt or whatever it was, right? Which to me was normal. Like nothing's going to happen, and if it does, whatever, it's not any more dangerous than what my day-to-day life was. Sure. But that's unacceptable behavior. But you don't know that when you're doing it. You need someone outside, or you need the distance observation to see and be like, dude. And that's obvious stuff,
I did some jiu-jitsu in when I was in active duty, and when I got out, I became an amateur cage fighter. And at the time, a lot of people were like, because I remember I didn't know I had a brain injury, and a lot of people were like, "Are you sure this is good for you? You know, you've been having some issues." As a man in my 40s now, I would look back and put my arm around me and say, "Listen, kid." But at the time, same exact thing, right? You get in a cage, someone's going to try to literally kill you. That's why you have a rep there. And it was the only way I could feel alive. It was like, and it didn't matter how beat up I got. And I was just not cognizant of it at the time. You're never really cognizant of it. And yeah, it's fascinating. Have you looked at any like alternative therapies, like ice baths, meditation, fasting, anything like that?
Yeah, there's a lot of things I've looked at. I'm actually looking at a ganglion knot injection therapy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's actually on my schedule to do. I'm not talking more about it right now because it's nobody else's business yet.
Sure.
But yeah, you know, and then and you know, look, here's the other thing, right? Like all of the people in the know what they know, like their tool of choice, right? So oh, you got to go to the desert and do ayahuasca. You know, and how I'm wired, I don't want to commit to being 36 hours somewhere with people I don't really know in a place I don't really know. That doesn't sound like enjoyable to me. I like to travel, but I want to do it on my terms. Like, no, you got to stay for 36 hours or whatever those things are. And I'm like,
ayahuasca's you're making a commitment with that.
Yeah, or like just offshore fishing, like my charity, Save the Brave. That's our go-to thing. Deep sea fishing right off the coast here in California.
Hey, I do not. Yeah. I think I met you guys. Do you have a chapter out here in the East Coast?
We probably do. I don't really handle anything with the fishing part.
Okay.
But here's the thing I do know. I don't want to be in a boat with a bunch of dudes for 24 hours or 12 hours or all fucking night long. That's just
I get that.
That won't calm me down.
Yeah.
I will be counting the minutes to get off the boat. I don't like fishing. I love to swim. I love the ocean, but I love the ocean on my terms because I know the ocean and we have an agreement that the ocean's always going to try to kill me. You know, and I don't mean because of sharks, just because I'm insignificant. I know how insignificant I am. It's not a fear of the ocean. It's a respect for how deadly the ocean can be. Yeah. And so being on a boat out in the middle of nowhere, doing something I don't want to do with a bunch of dudes that, you know, look, it's nice. I'll have lovely chats. I can do a lovely chat elsewhere, you know?
Yeah. On a podcast.
Exactly.
It's good to know your place. A lot of people, it sounds morbid. The book that changed my life, I read, and this is why I went in the military and all that stuff. I read Scott Palahniuk's Fight Club. I don't know how to say his name. I always just say it like that. And I remember reading it, and the biggest theme on it was you are going to die someday. You know, you can ignore it. You know, you can distract yourself with toys and nice things and cars, but it's coming. It's coming for everyone. No one's going to miss out on, or no one's going to skip that. Yeah. And I was like, you know what? I need to experience as much as I want. A lot of people, or as I can, a lot of people, they don't pay attention to that one fact in life. And you said that, you know, feeling inconsequential in the ocean, super important. And I think that's where things like ayahuasca, psilocybin, all those come into play, because what it does is it takes you and basically has you experience your pure consciousness with everything else stripped away, which is technically what death is. And people usually come back from that and they have profound changes. In fact, I've never done anything like that, but I've been kind of interested in it recently because the Warrior Angels are doing some research into it and stuff. And it looks good. The efficacy that it's having on veterans, people who are suffering with all a host of mental health issues, it's having really good outcomes with them. Psilocybin's one. I don't know if I said that. Yeah, and even THC. And luckily it's legal now everywhere with this version of it. They get it from hemp. Yeah. That one I have tried, and I'll say one of the best. So I'm constantly growing, right? I maybe 10 years ago, I wasn't paying attention to any of my issues, and I was just work. And then maybe over the last 5 years, I said, we got to work on stuff inside, because now I'm a dad, and now I'm a boss, and now I have to be in the right place. And I tried THC a little bit too much, and someone always told me, they said, always go a little bit too much. I didn't know what they meant until I took it, and it basically stripped all my armor away, and released all this anxiety. And I was like, oh man, I got some shit I really have to deal with. And it exposed that, and I couldn't ignore it for like a good 6 hours. And then afterwards I said, psychotherapy, I gotta go do cognitive processing therapy or whatever it was. And it made all the difference. So yeah, it's I wouldn't discount it. I think it can be dangerous if it's done in the improper setting. Absolutely. Yeah. You're in a jungle in Peru. It could be an issue, but yeah.
But a guy, another veteran who works on that space, also TBI survivor, and everything. We were talking to him. His name's Boone Cutler, and he does a whopping 4 milligrams in 2 doses every day.
Of what?
Psilocybin.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's just it's like nothing. It's barely even a dose.
They call that a microdose. Yeah, a lot of people in Silicon Valley do that.
Right, and here's the thing: like a microdose, an actual microdose. We're not talking 100 milligrams or like 1,000 milligram Motrins that we jam down our throat all the time. This is
shut down your kidneys, shut down your testes. Does a lot of nice things.
And he just says, hey, you know what? This works with that and some THC for him. He's like, I'm not trying to get high. I'm not trying to take drugs, but I am trying to be better.
Sure.
And these things make me better.
You get to a certain age and you're like, it's not a party anymore. Like you got 20-year-olds who do it. Okay, I get it. But a lot of these medicines, I don't know why they're illegal, because you're not having a good time, right? DMT is another big one. That's what the chemical in ayahuasca. When you take that, you're not on Earth anymore. Everyone I've spoken to that took it, they're launched somewhere out near Pluto, or maybe even further. And it's rarely a pleasant experience, but it's a growing experience. So it's like, why outlaw it? I could see if there was some dangers if people were like going into psychosis or dying, but you're not seeing that. But in the same breath, I can go down first. I can go down to the liquor store here, buy a 5th of bourbon, completely legal, and drink myself to death. The other thing too is, like you just said, the doctors can toss SSRIs, SNRIs, sleep meds. I was so addicted to sleep meds, I didn't even know it until I tried stopping. These aren't benign medicines by any stretch of the imagination. Anti-inflammatories can shut down your kidneys. These aren't benign, yet they're considered. You tell your friend you took 3,600 milligrams of ibuprofen, they don't bat an eye. You tell your friend, oh, I took 4 milligrams of psilocybin to get through my day, and they're like, oh, yeah, what are you doing?
Jesus hates you.
It's like, come on.
We are getting better at this. And again, everybody has their little drug of choice and all that stuff. But if it works for you, it works for you. But my buddy Johnny Walker is in Iraqi. He was an interpreter, right?
Oh, really? I thought you were saying Johnny Walker is your. I thought you were making a joke.
An actual human. Okay. He was an interpreter in Iraq, and he worked with the SEALs. He was my interpreter for a while. Okay. And he had a lot of PTSD because, of course, he went through this horrible war. And he went out in the desert, got himself whatever it was, ayahuasca, peyote, whatever it was. And he's like, I don't drink, I don't smoke, I am a better person. And he swears by it because you know what? It worked for him.
Yeah, very, very common for people to quit substances after that. In fact, there's one called Ibogaine, which is very famous for getting people off heroin, other addictive drugs like Xanax and stuff. It's crazy. In fact, I had an SF guy on my show just a couple weeks ago who he wasn't really having issues with alcohol. But 3 years ago, he did the Ibogaine, and he came back and he hasn't touched a drop since. And I don't know, as a medical provider, I don't know what that mechanism is that causes that. But it's definitely something that should be looked into, because a lot of people are self-medicating. And it sounds like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, because I'm like, THC for anxiety, sleep, whatever, but don't drink too much alcohol. No. I think it's you're either taking it to forget or taking it to grow. And anything you can take to forget, and now it's a dysfunction, versus taking it to improve yourself and get better. Now it has a function. So it's a fine line, and I don't recommend it. And your listeners, I'm not saying go out and start smoking weed and taking mushrooms and all that. It's definitely something. Talk to a doctor. Know what you're getting into.
We're not giving medical advice here.
No, not.
But we are talking about the experience of talking to people that have done different things. And,
absolutely.
And again, the system moves so slow, and not just the VA, the FDA, and all these other places. AG gets involved in medicine quite a bit. and they aren't geared to, and rightfully so. You shouldn't be gearing too fast to do these things. But if you've got a bunch of hard ass warriors that are not feeling well, and they're like, well, I'd like to not drink, I will go to wherever and get stem cell. I'll fly to Cuba and get stem cells or, and treatments, or, go to here to try this, because we don't want to die. We know our friends are killing themselves. We know we've met our friends that have killed themselves. And I know, like for me, like when I started all my treatment and everything, I understand that wherever I'm at, there was someone who ended their own life who was at the exact same spot as me. Sure. So I don't want to replicate their path. I don't want to go through the same gates as them. And I want to work desperately, as desperately as I wanted my traps to be big and my arms to be big. I want to be as healthy and as alive as I can be 30 years from now, And I'm not that old. I'll be in my early 80s. And apparently I thought I was going to die young, but here I am still. So, I need to take care of these things.
It's funny how you say that. I'm wondering if that is a side effect of going into combat or being in that situation. But I am constantly plagued with the idea that I'm not going to live, longer than most people. And I have no idea. And I'm not the only one. Right. I know a lot of folks that feel that way. I just think that's interesting how you say that. But I keep waking up and I keep having birthdays. I'm like, all right, guess I'm going to be here for another day.
I think part of it is like there's there's a habit aspect of it, and there's also some realization. Like I was telling, I did an interview for some work yesterday, and I said I realized one day that I was actually the guy, the desperado in Desperado, the song. Where like. Nothing too cold, nothing too hot, like nothing bothers me anymore. Like I was living this life that was no longer a real life, and I had to prove that. And also like things like drinking coffee or drinking energy drinks, all these things, it's too habitual because it's what you kind of just do as you do your day. And I didn't do tobacco, but I definitely drank a shitload of energy drinks because you had to do something and I didn't dip or any of those things. So that's what I did. And it took me a while to figure out, I actually don't need these things day to day,
Yeah. Or if you do them, appreciate them. There's mindfulness, which is a great mental way to reduce anxiety and get through your day. And that is like you just said, if I'm like, as I say that, I just drank a mindless cup of coffee, but take your time with things, stop and think about, the flavor, the taste, with your kids. If you have kids and I don't know, they want to be pushed on a swing, focus on every swing, on every minute of the wind, the weather. Is your child laughing? Just try to experience everything. It's still going to go, right? The experience is always going to, everything's a fleeting moment, but it's in that moment where you experience it that you actually live. Life becomes a hell of a lot longer if you live 100 very focused and mindful years than if you lived 50 just regular years. Like you can, I mean, that's all. I think mindfulness is just a fantastic thing. And that's sort of what you just brought up there.
There are 84,000 and change seconds in a day.
Yeah, really.
And you need some of those you have to burn on sleep. You have to sleep. You have to sleep.
Yep.
But there's a lot of other stuff you can do in that time. And then also just, I'm a big believer from working and interacting with the locals. I'm a big believer in creating perspective. A couple of examples. One of them is a friend of mine was traveling and he stayed at a less than great hotel, and it was all like these inconveniences because this hotel wasn't up to whatever standard he normally travels with. And I'm not saying the hotel wasn't junky, but you described wanting to take a nap on an airplane wing, which is decidedly worse than whatever hotel he was at. Or the time when I lay down, I'm like, oh, we got an hour or two to kill before everybody else finishes their work before we get into this combat patrol and head home. I'm going to sleep on these rocks. I'm going to go and take a nap. Like, I'm tired.
Perspective.
Yeah, right. And then the other thing is like when people talk about privilege and entitlements and all that stuff, then there's even like a checklist to see how privileged you are. Take that privilege list and apply it nationally. Do you live in a nation you have 3 distinct founding document protected freedoms? If you live in America, you do. It's personal, national, and political freedom. They all belong to us. It's ours. We can choose to change it. Everything else, we can fight over it, but we have that. Is fresh water a norm in your country, along with sanitation attached to that fresh water? Yes. Well, then you are double entitled, And so people are talking about all these other things and driving themselves crazy. But when you've been to places that don't have even trash service, and you're like, you guys are living horribly, like just completely unmodern. I'm not saying that their way is better or worse than ours, but not being able to deal with trash. Like when in San Francisco, up here by me, when they make plastic straws illegal, and I'm like, you need to go to Djibouti and just start filling up some bags full of waste plastic, because it's everywhere out there.
Yeah, 90% come from, I believe, 3 rivers, and they're all in Asia. I believe it might be in Africa too, but yeah, that's where all the plastic comes from. I always tell my kids, so if you looked at every human being that ever lived, and let's say you are lower middle class, you know, you got a 1,200-foot home, you know, maybe it's a duplex, you're scraping by, but you know, you're paying for food, and your kids are in school and they have clothes and stuff. You are living better than 99 point, who knows what the number was, maybe even 99.9% of humans that ever lived. Just go into your kitchen, like you just said. Look, we have fresh water, and I have a magical box that keeps my food cold, and another one that makes my food hot, all within this area. There was a show, I think they nailed it. It was it was about Dracula, and I wish I could remember. It was really entertaining. So it was it showed him go through several decades, and he was going to attack some woman in her apartment, a little tiny, just shitty apartment. And he was walking around, because remember, he's been around alive for, I don't know, thousands of years. I don't know when I don't know. I'm not up on my Dracula knowledge. Right. But he goes, "You are living like a king." Look at everything you have, lights and heat and water, and it's so true. When I saw that, I'm like, man, that's how I've been thinking for years. They nailed it.
Yeah, well, totally. And that we always think about water, right? Especially in combat zones, we're trying to bring fresh water. And then you talk to the person who's like, I deal with sanitation and I can't even get a meeting with anybody. You know, the moment you defecate, you can push a little button and that stuff goes away, and you never even consider it again. But there's actually a system behind that, you know, and there's some kind of process that turns that into some kind of usable product, whether it's reclaimed and circulated back in and dumped into the ground water table, or put right back into your faucets. I mean, whatever it's going to be. And we don't realize how extraordinary that is. We brought all kinds of freshwater capability to Iraq, and they're like, yeah, but we don't have a sewer, man. Oh yeah.
People don't realize how delicate that is too, right? We take advantage of it. Look what Texas, was it last winter? Yeah. Where they had the ice storm. I mean, and then whatever we're facing now, who knows, in the next 6 months with food shortage and stuff, that can turn on a dime. And I think a lot of people are going to have a rude awakening when they realize that everything we've taken for granted. Now, I don't like to be a pessimist, and I think people would laugh at me if they heard me say that, because a lot of what I say is pessimistic. But I'd like to think that it's overblown, much like everything else that you hear on the news. But even if it's not, even if if you know, we're going to have shortages and lines and panic and all that stuff, people are going to be there. We're going to have lots of appreciation over the next several months of what we had just a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. So, and we'll see. We actually talked about this last night on my show. We don't know. Is this hype? Is it not hype? Are we in for some trouble? Or are we not? We just don't know.
Right. And the other thing is our ability to withstand any kind of hardship. It's severely limited. And that's because we have it so good. And so what we would call a shortage, you know, folks in other eras of life would be like, you guys are having a feast. You're like, oh, you know, the price in tacos went up by $1. How horrible for you guys. Were there still tacos there? Yes, but the cuts of meat were terrible.
I couldn't get a New York strip, a dry-aged New York strip. They had no Wagyu.
When at the height of the pandemic, when everybody was going bananas and buying paper towels, my cultural brain kicked in, and I said, this is BS. This is just crazy.
Couldn't figure it out.
And so I literally had my girlfriend and I go across the street. Granted, a big boulevard, but it's across the street to the other grocery store, and it was like the Mexican grocery store. Mm-hmm. And it was essentially fully stocked. Were they short on some items? Yeah. But they had a lot of paper towels. You weren't going to get the Bounty, you know, select the size roll. But in a marketplace where it was hard to get paper towels or toilet paper, you could find those things along with fresh meat and everything else. The other store had been hammered because people had freaked out. You know, like Super Bowl time. If I want to get avocados, I don't go to the Albertsons. I go across the street to the Mexican store because they're not freaking out about making guacamole once a year. They're just, their buyer knows how to buy avocados for their people.
Yeah, we've gotten pretty comfy over the last maybe
boy.
50 years or so. And I remember thinking that when COVID started, being in the medical community, I was legitimately freaked out at first. I said, I don't know what this is.
Yeah.
We had CDC meetings and I was like, all right, we got to pay attention. And then, 4, 5, 6 weeks went by and I was like, okay, I got it. We've seen this before. We have flu every year and I just moved on.
Right.
But what I was very cognizant of when it first started is how much panic people were in, as if we don't get to have hardship. Our grandparents had the Great Depression, World War II. Our great-grandparents, great-great-grandparents had, the Civil War and all this stuff. And suddenly we're just supposed to not have any hardship and everything is supposed to be, roses. And no, that's not the case. And what you stress about on a daily life. Oh, you got banned from Twitter. Oh, you're, I don't know, you didn't get likes on some sort of social media thing. All that's going to stack up to a hill of beans when it comes to, oh my gosh, I don't have work or, you know what I mean? And I was hoping that this would be a learning, a societal learning thing. And who knows, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't.
Yeah, maybe it was. Yeah, maybe give it some time for us to learn. One thing we've learned is that whatever COVID is, I mean, there's just look today. There were 1,200 deaths in the U.S. Yesterday from COVID, and that's just what's reported. But that number, and we're above 1 million deaths now. I thought, and you want to get political for a second? I thought this administration had an answer.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess they didn't. An answer.
Well,
and the administration before has its own problems, but we've learned to adapt to this disease, and we realize what it is, and we don't have to chastise each other for trying to kill everybody's grandma and all these bullshit narratives. Like, this is something we have to deal with. We have to act differently. We should make ourselves healthier. We should protect our old people, protect people that have existing. We've learned a lot about this, but still 1,000 people a day are dying from it.
Human beings think they're so important, and we think that, like we vote for a president and he's going to have a policy and it's going to change. I think if we had no presidents, if we had no government over the last 5 years, I guarantee you we most likely would be sitting here having the same conversation with the same amount of, because there's no answer to everything.
No.
And this earth, it's been here for a long time. And if it doesn't want us here, it's going to shake us off like fleas off a dog. Yeah. We are not that important. We think we are, and we think we're so smart, but we're still just pink monkeys, flinging shit at each other all day long. And and when you realize that, it's kind of like that whole someday you're going to die. When you realize that, you realize that as a human being, you're only really designed to have a small group of friends, family, community. And all this other shit is just noise. And so you pull yourself back from that. You focus on your kids, you focus on your wife, or you focus on your elderly neighbor, and life becomes so much better. You turn off the news. I haven't watched news. I turned it on when Ukraine kicked off, and then I started getting depressed and angry. And I was like, what is this? What is this? What they're trying to do? Are they trying to sway me to feel this way?
Yes.
Can I go to the yeah. And so it's like I can go to the dark side, or I can come to the light side and enjoy what's here. And well, they might nuke you. Sure. I mean, what am I going to do to fix that? Right.
Yeah,
or a comet could land like it did to the dinosaurs, and another couple dozen times it's hit the earth. Right. Just focus on what's around you and you feel so much better.
We had Buddy Levy on the show the other day. He wrote a fantastic book about the conquistadors, and not a sequel, but like an addition to that story about this guy Oregano, who did like a full run down the entire Amazon from the Andes Mountains all the way out to the into the Amazon, and that was the beginning of the time when the Spaniards were coming into the Americas. And there's an estimate, and we don't know what the number is, but there were 5 million people in the Amazon basin, right? And we didn't kill those people directly, but it was disease, and they couldn't adapt to it. And then boom, there goes entire villages, histories and everything else. And you want to get really insignificant. I love to say this, but it's also 100% true. Like, we're taught that nature hates a vacuum. Well, scope back a little bit and realize that a vacuum is the norm of nature.
Yeah.
That is the natural norm for all things. And we live in this very fragile place in our lives. If something's 38 million light years away from us, if there are things that are that far away and we happen to see a flash of light from that thing that happened all those years ago, you realize that you're nothing. You don't even exist. Nothing exists in that light except for the fact that the light goes swinging by us. There's no history in it. There's nothing. We know what compounds are in it. So there's an elemental history, but otherwise, it's nothing. So quit taking shit so serious. You work on the things that matter to you. And here's another big thing that I'm always pushing. Just today, I posted on Facebook. There's a war going on in Burma, genocide. In Myanmar, or whatever, Myanmar, Burma, whatever side you want to call it. But there are people dying every day, being slaughtered for their ethnicity.
Sure.
I don't see anybody flying any flags, supporting anybody for that. They don't care about that.
Yeah, it's whatever's the flavor of the day.
Right.
Do you know the ziggurat? I believe it was the ancient biblical city of Ur.
Yeah.
There was an air base there, and I can never remember the name of it. Whatever. So it's in southern Iraq, and if you walked a couple hundred yards off the runway, you could see this pyramid. It's basically a pyramid, and it's they believe it's from where Abraham. It was the home of Abraham, and
right.
And you go over to these steps, and you realize this building or this complex is 3,000 years old, something like that. It's ridiculous. And you look at the steps, and they're still there. You see some places where it's been worn, where they walk up, and you think to yourself, thousands of generations of people have come before me, and they've walked up these steps, and maybe they had a bad day. Maybe they had something horrific and tragic happen in their lives, but they lived and then they died. And now, they go back to oblivion. We don't have records of all these people. And it sounds depressing, very nihilistic, but it isn't. It's therapeutic because, going back to my notion of keeping everything close to your heart, that becomes eternity for you. That's the most important thing. And if you're cognizant of every moment you have with that, then your life does have meaning. But if you're trying to think about this, Julius Caesar, right? Think back then, Rome. He had all these armies and this massive empire. On this little blue dot. Have you ever seen that picture? They call it the pale blue dot.
Yeah.
So you think about and the pale blue dot is, I believe, the Voyager, sort of robot. Yeah, it looked back and it took a picture of the Earth, and it looked like a speck of dust in a room, a badly lit room. And you realize that every single moment in human history took place on that little tiny speck. And at some point it's going to reset, whether it's from a comet or it's, whatever it is. And none of that matters, right? Yeah. None of it matters. World War II doesn't matter. It's gone. The Colosseum doesn't matter. It's gone. It's all just in the blink of an eye. Yeah. Wow. We're getting very Nietzsche. How did this happen?
That's because I'm so niched. I'm Nietzsche.
There you go.
The point that you're making is important, though, in that you realize, where do my efforts need to go? For me, it's Save the Brave. For me, it's fellowship with my friends and family. When my brother passed, I always kind of default towards those. But my brother passed in October. I'm like, I'm just going to double down on these things. More relationships, more time spent together. For sure, less time on social media. I mean, I've got to do my due diligence because of what we do for a living. But I'm not going to tie my feelings into these things. I'm going to go see the people. When someone pops into my brain, I'm going to allow that to be a cosmic reminder. Hey, go call Sully, and check in with him. And so I do that stuff more. And then so many times my person I call, and I may not have called them for a year, however long it is, they're like, I was just thinking about you. Happens all the time. So,
isn't that strange? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's not coincidental with as often as it happens. So
exactly.
Yeah, I guess it's not strange. I guess it's the norm, and I'm acting like it is now.
We live in a life, and we judge it by what we can see, feel, touch, smell, taste. Did I get all the senses? That becomes reality to us, and we think that that's all there is. But then go talk to I guess if you could talk to a honeybee, and they would be like, no. There's more colors out there to see. there, we only can understand what our senses can tell us. I think, you know, when you start thinking about thought and where this thought comes from, and it comes from molecules in our brain, and what are molecules made up of? Atoms. And what are atoms made up of? These theoretical particles that snap in and out of existence, that have little wormholes. And the very basis of even just us having this conversation comes from an area that we have no concept of what it means. And yeah, you can, you know, there's so many theories out there of what it is. I mean, are we just in a plane of existence, you know, mere centimeters away from another complete plane? We don't know. We have no idea. Right. But I do believe, and I don't think it's magical thinking, I do believe that there is something that we can tap into. I mean, look at shamanic breathing. People that have like DMT-like experiences simply by breathing and meditating and tapping into that signal that's in their brain. It's crazy. There's more to life than, you know, watching Netflix and chilling. There's now that's fun every now and then, but there is a heck of a lot more, and expanding what you know is, I mean, I feel bad for people that are so hell bent on, you know, just, well, that Netflix. What's the latest show that someone, who cares? Who cares? Go meditate and see if you can meet God. It's pretty cool.
You know, I say often, if you go out and you swim and you work your body for an hour and you come out, that's meditative as hell.
Sure.
You absolutely have to feel better than when you got into that pool.
Yeah.
Your brain, you'll go on this, because you don't have to count laps anymore. Like, you can just use your watch, or you can choose time, or you can be like, I don't give a damn. I know what an hour is. I'm just going to swim and then pop up every now and then and see how much time I have left. But when your brain will go on a journey, and if you don't control it at all, you'd be amazed at where you go and the things that you work on, and and just without even like trying to remember where you go to all these. It's a journey, and it's fucking swimming. You know, just go get in the pool and you will feel better. And if you can't swim, guess what? You really can. There's no human that cannot swim in some fashion. We're from the water. You can absolutely swim.
Amazing that if you put in work, that on the other side things are better. You know, nothing comes without work. Nothing comes without struggle. You are never, the best rest comes after hard work, and it's the best feeling in the entire world. We do a lot of, I work with irreverent warriors, and we do a lot of what we call Silkies hikes. And, you know, you have to pack, well, you don't have to, but it's encouraged that you pack 22 kilograms, and we try to walk or ruck 22 miles in silky shorts and boots. And the feeling you have at the end of that struggle, you know, especially if it's hot out or even cold out, is second to none. I mean, you can't bottle that. You can't get it from, you know, bourbon or beer or anything like that. It's just such a good feeling. And, you know, it makes you realize that how we are as human beings, how we are designed to operate, right? If we're designed to seek pleasure, then doing hard things is the avenue to which you actually achieve that. It's really cool. Or if you, like, I did a lot of cycling things back years ago with veteran groups. Same thing, you know, you do 100 miles in cold rain, you get back to that hotel room, that's going to be the best shower you've taken in months. And
it is simple, small stuff. So yesterday I decided to go by the grave of this seminal figure in music that's largely forgotten. His name's Jelly Roll Morton, and he happens to be buried in LA, and I happen to be going kind of sort of by, you know, within 5 minutes of his burial site. And I didn't know specifically where it was. I'd have to, you know, go walk around and find him and stuff, but I had a general idea of where he was. And the main reason why I did it was this musician that I know that I'm friends with, his name's Chris Thomas King. He had written this book, and he talks about Jelly Roll. And so I'm like, I'm going to go to, because I'm just going to take the time in my day to do this. And I took a little picture and I sent a little video, hey, you know, and I sent it to Chris, and I know I put a smile on his face. I gave someone a smile yesterday, you know, and what a treat, you know. So even something as simple as that, it's my little good deed of the day. What's the last good deed that you did?
Oh, good question.
I finally asked a question.
Yeah.
Now we're into the show.
I feel like my day is filled with that. I mean, most of everything I do is in the service of others, right? I can't think of one because it's not something I keep track of. I mean, being a medical provider, I like to think I'm not someone that puts people on medicines. I ease suffering. So there's that, volunteering at my kid's school, my coffee company, every
you're
moment.
busy.
Yeah, every moment I'm working on with that, we are physically, we're putting in the work to improve lives of veterans and first responders. The podcast, Irreverent Warrior. I mean, the list is a mile long, and it just, I don't feel compelled to do that. I just do it, and I don't have an answer why, or just follow. And this is going to sound so cliche. You just follow your heart. Your heart will tell you what to do. You just have to listen to it.
And then don't be distracted. Do that thing. If you care about Syrian refugees, then really focus on that.
Do it.
Don't
Put
get
the work
pissed
in.
off.
Open up a room in your house and have them come in. And you'll think to yourself, you'll say to yourself, that's so like what? That's a process I can't even think about doing. And how would I do?
Yeah.
Who cares? Do it. Follow your heart and see what happens.
Do it.
You're getting that signal from somewhere. So yeah, just do it. Put the work in.
Yeah, I love it. You want to ask me anything before we wrap this thing up?
I was flipping through your thing. You had Jay Moore on the other day, huh?
That's right. Yeah.
That's cool. How'd you get in touch with him? He used to be, so my podcast is on the former Opie and Anthony. Now it's just Anthony Cumia.
Right.
And he was always on their network. And I was impressed to see that. That's really cool.
Yeah, well, I'm impressive. Because of this crazy show that I've started.
Yeah.
It's incredible. I've met all these incredible people, and Jay's my friend now. And so
excellent.
I don't get to have him on often enough, but that's how it is with friends. They're all busy doing stuff. So he's become my friend, and I've known him for, it's going to be 8 years here in a minute.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, and that just it's that. And you know how this goes. Like there's certain people as you meet on the show, you can't keep all of them, but you can always reach out to all of them.
Oh yeah.
And you have these incredible people. And look, man, we've had 1,300 episodes, and so I've got this whole new world that I've built. And I'd rather focus on that and the goodness that we all create when we do this thing than any kind of negative anything,
And you're always reaching. So my life, that whole situation where I went from PTSD, horrible medicines to being as close to self-actualized as I can get, that all came from a podcast. All of that came from, I heard my friend now, Andrew Marr, talking on Joe Rogan, and that's all it took. It was I listened to it. And then after that is why I started podcasting. Cause I'm like, even if you, and I have friends that say, I want to start a podcast, but what, I have to build an audience. And let's say 3 people listen to your show. Fine. Yeah. When is the last time you've been able to sit and talk to 3 people and reach them? And maybe, you know what I mean? So it's always important to get stories out there, because you never know just that one story, that one person. And if 1,300 episodes, let's say you could go back to before you started it, and someone said, I'm going to have you do all this work, this many years. And I'm I would think that this number is a lot bigger, but someone says, and it'll save 1 life. Would you do it?
Twice. I do it twice. I do it. Yeah. I'd work twice as hard, twice as long if I could save someone's life.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what, and I guarantee you have, because that's just how these things work. That's how this works.
Yeah. And I help people start podcasts. And one of the things that, I say is like building an audience is impossible. It's just, it's too crowded. It's too hard to do. So don't do it for that reason. But also keep in mind, if you sat down in like your local pizza parlor or whatever, and there were 25 people intently listening to you have a conversation with somebody else, would you find value in that? Yes.
Sure.
Like, well, then just let that be the goal. And then every time you fill that room with more people, good. Don't worry too much about it,
Yeah. Don't even look at your numbers. Just focus on becoming good. Focus on becoming good.
Yeah.
Learn how to talk.
Stand by. Let me shut this thing down. That's a perfect place to stop. Stand by.
Okay.
Hey, thanks for watching the show. I really appreciate it. Right here, you can subscribe. Please do that. It makes the show grow. Hit that notification bell so you know which incredible guest is coming up next. Down below is the PayPal link. You can put a small subscription in. That is an enormous help. All that money goes right back into the show. And then right up over here are the next episodes you should listen to, curated by yours truly. Thank you so much.